We have the great pleasure to have Barbara Tomotani here. She is an ecologist, an animal ecologist, behavior evolutionary ecologist. You now work in the Arctic at Tromsø, in Tromsø, and you have a PhD from Wageningen in the Netherlands. And you will talk about how animals, in your case, it's songbirds and land snails, I think, adapt to different light regimes, and especially to the light regime of the north. Thank you for being here. Not yet.
Yeah, hello.
Maybe I think maybe the wrong one is on.
Hello. Now, yeah?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, you're still on.
So thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. So I'm Barbara Tomotani. This talk is not going to be about reindeer, but still I'm part of the Arctic chronobiology and physiology group. Still, even though there are no reindeers in my talk, I hope you still enjoy it to hear a bit about small animals. So we know that our world is changing at an unprecedented rate. And climate change is really one of the biggest threats that we have today, because it changes the global temperature, which are getting higher and higher. But then one of the consequences that we not always think about it is that Arctic environments are getting milder. And this allows animals that would not live there to colonize this new environment. But of course, things are not, if you move into the Arctic, it's not all about temperature. You also have to realize that you're going to face a very, very different light conditions. So these organisms evolved in a very cyclic environment with clear days and nights, but now they are invading an environment where they have no nights in summer and no daylight in winter. So could that actually be a problem? I think for the chronobiologists in this room, I don't need to say anything else, but we know that our animals have rhythms. For example, if you think about a diurnal bird, it will be active during the day and sleeping during the night. But it's not only responding to the day and night, it actually has a clock which is synchronized especially to the light-dark cycles in this environment, which is a really important cue for the clock. And in turn, it has a 24-hour rhythm. So this guarantees that this animal has a precise body functions happening at the right time and also a correct timing of behavior. So the question is, what happens now if they move into an environment with crazy light? Is it possible that they will now face problems with sleeping and maybe disrupted body functions? Or even worse, they can make wrong behavioral decisions and maybe they will die because they're going to be active when a predator is present. So does it mean that if you move into the Arctic, you're doomed? So you cannot survive, this is very bad for you. So of course, this is not the case. And we know that because many populations get established in the Arctic. And one of the reasons why this could be the case is because we know that natural selection may be a reason why populations can persist. So just to explain this very quickly, so if you get several individuals in a southern population, if you measure them, they are going to be slightly different from each other. So some may have different clocks, some may have different light perception or behave a little bit differently. And as they move into this northern environment, a lot of them will die. So most of them are not going to make it, but some may have just the right characteristics, like certain types of clock or certain types of behavior or light perception, that actually allows them to establish there and maybe thrive. And those are the ones that are going to get established. So this is the process that we can call local adaptation. But the question that I ask in my research is whether these type of evolutionary adaptations to novel light are actually possible. And especially, I want to understand how fast these changes may take place. The speed of the change is very important in this context because our changes into the environment, so like global environmental changes, they actually take place at a very fast rate. So we want to understand whether animals can actually follow through and adapt accordingly. The way that I do this, I compare populations from northern and southern environments, but I'm particularly interested in species that are actually recently colonizing the Arctic environment. Because if I know something about the history of colonization, then I can use this history of colonization to learn something about how quick these changes may take place. So I think you saw and talked to me a little bit. I'm very fanatic about birds, and actually my research has mostly been using this guy, the great tit. But what I would like to to show you today is actually a sneak peek of something that we have been developing with land snails. This is slightly different. They are not birds, but it's still very interesting. And we only managed to do this thanks to the funding that we got from the VALUC. So we are very pleased with that. So what we're trying to do is to establish land snails as model systems so we can study the questions that I showed to you. So this is the copse snail. These are the distribution of the copse snail. So they are a bit this big. And it's the largest snail species that can survive in the Arctic environments today. And they are now spreading slowly in Finland, in inland Finland as well. And they are now colonizing a little bit further and further into the Arctic. So as all our snail species, they are nocturnal, and snails are nocturnal. The people believe that because they have a high risk of desiccation during the day. So they need moisture to be active, to actually to thrive. So if they would be active during the day, they would face a higher risk of desiccation. So winter would be perfect for them to be active, but in the Arctic, they have a second problem, which is 2 meters of snow on the ground and completely frozen grounds. So this means that they cannot be active at all during winter when they would only have nights. And then in summer, summer is perfect. They basically have 3 months without any snow on the ground, so where they could perform all their activities. They need to come out of hibernation, find a mate, breed, lay eggs, but there's only daylight. So then we start questioning and trying to get this question, how can they do this? I'm just going to show you very preliminary basic data that we got so far. So we went out and collect snails in Tromsø and also in Oslo, where there's still some nights during summer. So these are our animals. And we brought them to our snail lab. So you may have heard of the snail lab from our previous conference, where Rodrigo came to tell you that we were building this facility. And I can tell you, I'm very happy to say that we actually now are able to breed these animals in captivity. And the past months, we've been trying very, very hard to get a tracking of these animals in captivity so we can actually start measuring their rhythms. This is really cool. It's 50 times the speed up. So this has been like a tremendous challenge, actually, to get activity rhythms from these guys. It's been a trial and error process, and that's what took the longest. So I'm just going to show you some preliminary results. We did manage to get rhythms, so we're actually really pleased with that. So these are just a couple of ectograms as an example that we placed. So we had animals in light and dark cycles. And so today, I'm not going to go very crazy about any rhythmicity measurements or anything. I'm just going to focus a little bit on the amounts of activity during light and darkness. So we confirmed in the lab that these guys are nocturnal. So they are indeed concentrated mostly of their activities during the dark phase. And this is good, what we expected. But I'm going to just focus now on the amount of activity during the light phase. So if you compare the amounts of activity that they have during the light phase, and what we also saw is that animals that come from the Arctic environment, they're way more active during the light phase than animals that come from the south. So these very preliminary results are quite nice for us because it allows us to have some predictions in terms of how these animals are behaving and what does it mean for them, because maybe it's possible that these guys from the Arctic are more flexible in terms of their behavior. And that would be very important because this will allow them to use different conditions of the environment and take advantage of this ideal humidity for foraging. As I said, this is just the start. So I was just giving a sneak peek of what we found. So we really want to go further and look way more in depth now that we have some kind of setup into light perception clocks and behavioral decisions. And very importantly, I'm very much interested in looking at whether these differences between populations actually allow these animals to survive better in their local environment. So either survive or reproduce better in their local environment, because this is what we need to understand local adaptation. Right, so I want to conclude my talk by telling you that we know that more species are going to move north. And I think it's quite important to try to understand whether light will actually be a barrier for these guys and whether populations can actually adapt and how fast can they adapt. And I say that because I think this is not only important if we want to try to predict whether we can mitigate climate change impacts, because we know that a lot of southern environments are going to get less and less suitable. So maybe some of these species may find a refuge in northern environments. But we also need to consider that a lot of these animals that are going to come northwards, maybe they're not so nice because they will come with invasive species and also agricultural pests and diseases like the deer brainworm. And we may want to predict whether these animals are actually going to be able to get established and in the environment. So I hope that with this type of research, we can actually make predictions of which species are actually going to be able to adapt to these environments. So I was really quick, but I hope that I could tell you my story, and I'm very, very grateful for my team, especially Rodrigo, who was actually being the driving force behind this. And if you have any questions, I'm very happy to take any. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for a fascinating talk. Indeed, we have time for questions.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the talk. Very interesting. I wonder for the snails, probably humidity makes also a difference in your lab. Do you also have humidity cycles together with the light cycles?
We are not doing humidity cycles. What we are trying to keep them humid, constantly humid. I want to confound humidity cycles with light dark cycles as next experiment. Yeah. Like they are very quick actually. They move a lot. It's you wouldn't expect that, but they can actually move quite a bit. Like and so you have to think like if you're a snail, and you find a patch that is not good, you have to find another patch that may be quite far away to eat. So you do need to move quite a bit. Very good question. So that's like that's really what we want to get, because like so now we got these measurements are indeed from wild caught animals, which tells you that that's something. It could be some plasticity of that different populations have. So if we really want to tell about something about genetics, that's the next step. We have them breeding captivity, and then we measure the offspring, and if the differences persist, we can say something that they're actually genetically different. So yes.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I'm assuming the snails will be photoperiodic.
Yes.
And do you see any changes in critical day length in the species that have moved north?
So we don't have that measurement, but like a measurement with insects do suggest that the critical day length definitely changes depending on the yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it absolutely fascinating. What is your prediction about what's happening to these two species? I'm sort of thinking it's a different environment. They could flourish. There could be a very harsh winter coming, and they sort of the whole population collapses.
Yes.
They could become invasive, like we have with Canada and Nile geese or whatever. So, can you predict what fate they have with this changing climate? Because obviously you're opening up a completely new environment with great food sources. So it could be a great opportunity for the great hit to spread.
Yes, I think like the southern animals that are colonizing the Arctic are going to find a very good environment, especially for the greatest, definitely. Like so they are spreading really quick, but I think also for the snails, if you have either behavioral clock changes genetically that are genetic, then they can definitely also spread. So for those two, I definitely predict that they're going to increase in numbers in the north, but the great tit is already getting like problems in the south. So in Spain, the population is collapsing because of the increase in temperatures. And I think the same will happen for these species of snail because they're quite intolerant to really high temperatures. So I think you're really going to have a shift in the fauna from northern regions.
Are they outcompeting other species?
We are not that we don't think so. The great tit has a really separate niches from the local species that are in the Arctic. But for example, ptarmigan, they will get extinct, I think, but not because the great tits are moving in, but just because the environment is going to get unsuitable for them to live. Yeah.
Any other questions? Because I have one question. I'm an urban ecologist, and the cities are these environments with rapid evolution and with a different daylight regime, light pollution. So, do you know whether species also adapt to the light of cities?
Yes, so I have been looking into that in great tits, and a lot of people have been looking into different traits. So we do see genetic changes in populations that are called, I'm mostly going to talk about great tits, right? Because that's the literature they're most familiar with. So there's definitely genetic changes between populations in the city and forest, in contrast to forest environments. But what we could not see yet is whether it's adaptive. So it's possible that you have individuals being displaced that have certain characteristics that they cannot compete so well in the forest, but it's not that they are thriving in the cities either. So like certain species will thrive in cities, like sparrows, well, rats, mice, but not everything will thrive in cities. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Yep.
no, definitely. We have now peregrine falcons in Zurich.
Yes,
so
that's fantastic. Yeah.
yes. So thanks a lot, Barbara, for a wonderful talk.